And great pleasure to have joining us today on the Book Talk segment of the show, a man who has written a book that's going to be helpful, I'm sure, to people going through divorce. It's called How to Be a Good Divorce Dad, Being the Best Parent You Can Be Before, During, and After the Breakup. We're joined by attorney Jeffrey M. Leving today from the Chicago area. Jeffrey, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Oh, it's my pleasure, and it's great to be on your show.
Good to have a chance to talk to you, an opportunity to read through the book, and I guess in a way it's sad to say more and more men or more and more couples, obviously, but more and more men are going through divorce, and it seems from reading your book and just kind of doing a little research on it that men are not getting always the best outcome legally. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. In this new book, this is my third book. My first book was Father's Rights, Second Divorce Wars, and this book is unfortunately a pain-filled book, but it does offer critical advice that dads need so they don't lose their children, their homes, and their retirement benefits, and end up indigent without assets and without their own children.
Yeah, I've seen locally down here in our area, Jeffrey, well, on the radio, these ads for different legal firms that specialize in helping just men going through divorce. I never heard that until about a couple of years ago. I guess that has become a necessity nowadays, hasn't it?
It is. I've been practicing law since 1979, and when I started promoting father's rights as a practice area, it was very unusual, and most lawyers thought it was ridiculous. Now, many lawyers are following the practice area that I believe I helped create, because father absence is a growing problem in our country, and gender bias, vindictive spouses, and legal trickery all conspire to separate fathers from their children. And the vast majority of dads want to be present in their children's lives, but they become discouraged, frustrated, and this book can help them not give up hope. And that's what I'm hoping, because too many dads give up, walk away, and some are kicked away. And that's terrible, because father absence can have a terrible effect on children in America. If you look at these statistics, you see children that are father absent are more likely to do poor academically, to live in poverty, to develop behavioral disorders. Little girls that are father absent are more likely to become victims of sexual abuse. In my first book, Father's Rights, which is actually a bestseller on Amazon.com, the last time I checked, it was rated #1 in their category of families and children. But if you look at pages 46 and 47 of my first book, Father's Rights, you'll see how father absence can have a terrible effect on children. And the most reliable predictor of crime in America is father absence.
Yeah, scary statistics when you see all the marriages that are not working, and obviously a lot of children are being born not in marriages either, so that's another aspect added to it, although that wouldn't result in divorce necessarily, because there is no marriage, but it all adds to that bad statistic, right? Absence of fathers.
Exactly. You brought up a critical issue, because approximately 1/3 of all children born in America are born out of wedlock, and there are approximately 24 million children living absent their biological father. And this is really, really serious, and this is an issue that needs to be corrected, and this book hopefully will provide not just legal guidance, but psychological and spiritual guidance to fathers so they don't give up, and they protect their children, and they identify obstacles that can drive a wedge between them and their children, and they learn how to insulate their children from not just divorce, but even parental breakup in paternity cases where the parents were not even married.
I know you talk about it in the book. We mentioned briefly already the gender bias, which is in the legal system now. Is that something relatively new, Jeffrey? And how did it get there?
Well, it's unfortunately not new, but it's not being swept under the carpet and concealed and hidden as it was in 1979 when I started practicing law. I believe it was Margaret Luther who said, fathers are a biological necessity, but a social accident. And we know that's not true. She was incorrect, but unfortunately, a belief system and a value system perpetuated with negative male stereotypes, that has pushed fathers to the curb, kicked them to the curb. And this is something that really needs to change. When I started practicing law in 1979, lawyers would come up to me and ask me, how can a man walk away from his children? And my response was, how can our legal system push a man out of his own children's lives, because any man's loss of a child diminishes mankind. And that was my response. But gender bias is a problem. I remember consulting with one father, a wonderful father, a Hispanic father, and the judge ordered him not to speak Spanish to his little girl, and he didn't know what to do because he was worried that if he spoke Spanish to his daughter, he'd end up in contempt and incarcerated. Well, no judge should make a decision that would put a father in jail for trying to speak his native language to his daughter. But we have a lot of problems in our legal system. That's one of them, and they need to be corrected. And a real big problem that I was confronted with, and I'll never forget this, I was representing a father, a great dad, and the mother, while under the influence of cocaine and alcohol, smashed up the vehicle she was driving, causing permanent brain damage to their little baby boy. The boy was in the hospital, and I walked into court, and the judge did not want to use the word custody in a court order giving custody to dad, because I believe that judge was so gender biased she couldn't make the correct decision, even though the mother was using illegal drugs, almost killed her own child, and was criminally charged because of the auto accident she created while under the influence. But I did get the word temporary possession in that court order, and I'll never forget walking out of that courtroom with a court order transferring possession of the child to the father. The judge would not use the word custody, would only use the word possession. And she looked at me and said, Leving, I want the mom in rehab, I want the mother rehabilitated off drugs and alcohol, and when she's better, I want that child returned to mom. Do you understand me, counselor? And that is something I will never forget, and my client was almost in tears. He was devastated. That was his only child, and it was a horrific accident. And that's one example of gender bias that is terrible for our children, for our families, and for our nation.
Yeah, that's a sad situation there. Well, what is a way to change that? Obviously, anything legal has to be mandated somehow. I don't know how you do that, through voting or what. What can be done to at least make it better legally?
Voting is very, very powerful, and fortunately in Illinois, I was appointed by an Illinois governor to chair the Illinois Council on Responsible Fatherhood. So in Illinois, there's a government body focused on these issues. So that's a big help. I also put together a website for my law firm, dadsrights.com, and on that website there's a lot of information that could help fathers, a lot of resource information on dadsrights.com. And I also do a lot of writing, not just books, but I have a column in the Examiner, and if anybody goes to examiner.com and you look under my name, Jeffrey Leving, you'll see articles I've written promoting gender fairness and justice and due process and equal protection, because we can change the system, and we need to change the system to protect our children, because the children are the future of our society.
I know we have limited time today, but other issues, obviously, money, alimony, child support payments, all that. I mean, that factors in, and that can be a mess too. I know I had a family member that went through all of that, so that's a huge issue, isn't it?
Exactly. I represented a father in Atlanta, Georgia, who was ordered to pay child support for another man's child. He's a minister, and he didn't know what to do. Because he was worried that he'd go to jail for not paying child support, and he wasn't even the father. I represented this man for free all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court because I thought this was a critical issue of fraud and deception, and thank God now this man is not paying child support for another man's child.
Yeah. Are you optimistic, Jeffrey? Obviously, we're seeing more and more marriages end in divorce, it seems, anyway. Are you optimistic at least it's going to get better?
I'm optimistic, and I'm not giving up hope, and I'm hoping things will get better, but I'm also a realist, and I am realistic, and I know that this is really tough, and it's a real tough issue, but I'm not going to give up. And one issue we have is we have a lot of young boys that are father absent that don't have biological male role models, and their definition of manhood is also was often based on the media's glorification of violence as defining manhood and recreational and multiple sex partners, which is terrible for young boys.
Right.
But a lot of young boys, especially in fragile families without biological dads, their definition of manhood is based on movies having to do with violence and multiple sex partners, and that's another problem. But the key here is I'm not going to give up hope, and I tell my clients, don't give up hope. And I represent a lot of military dads, and I tell the military dads I represent, do not give up hope and just focus on protecting your children and your assets, obviously.
And particularly on that other point you just made, you see it in the NBA and NFL and professional athletics. How many athletes have you heard the stories? They have multiple kids with multiple women. I mean, that's supposedly role models. They're not, but kids look up to those, and it just kind of perpetuates itself. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I represented a father who played for the Jacksonville Jaguars, a professional football player, and there is a negative stereotype that professional athletes are all deadbeats, which is not true. And this NFL player I represented was really a good dad, really cared, but he was under a magnifying glass, and he was dealing not only with negative male stereotyping, but also stereotyping based on him being an NFL player.
Right.
But he was and still is a good dad.
Well, the name of the book is called How to Be a Good Divorced Dad. We've been talking with attorney Jeffrey M. Leving today. And, Jeff, I know you gave the website. Give it out again, and where people can get the book.
My website is dadsrights.com, dadsrights.com, and you can get the book on Amazon.com. But if there's any problem getting the book, because it's just released this year, you could always call me directly, 312-356-DADS, and I'll make sure you get a copy of the book, 312-356-DADS, How to Be a Good Divorced Dad.
Great. Jeffrey, appreciate you taking a few minutes. I know you're a busy man, but you're doing good work, and keep up the good fight. I know a lot of men out there appreciate that.
Thank you. And this is very, very, very important, and it's an honor to be on your show, because your show is very powerful in promoting important legal and social issues.
Great. Jeffrey Leving, our guest. We'll be right back after this.